Hi guys, this is Carol. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have an update on our IVF journey. So it's been a while since my last video, and that's not to say that a lot hasn't been going on, because honestly a lot has happened. So I wanted to just jump on here and give you guys an update. The last time I posted, I talked about getting a second and third opinion regarding my options for the next cycle that we pursue. And I mentioned that I came across a doctor at Cornell who actually gave me some options that I didn't know I had from an alternate, doctor perspective. So we did decide to go ahead and get started with Cornell. And so since then, I met with the doctor, I've met with the nursing staff, I submitted a whole lot of documents, I had all my records sent over, just the basic administrative type things. And I started to go in for my monitoring, being that one of his recommendations was to track my natural menstrual cycle to determine the best follicle size. So I went in at one time almost daily, just so that he could closely see what was going on, and that included blood work and ultrasounds. And I think really the big takeaway from that exercise was, to my understanding, that my follicle naturally, matures around 18 millimeters. So there wasn't anything that I picked up that was much different from before. But I'll have to get back to you guys on that bit, because I'm sure as we get into the cycle and follow the measurement of the follicles, maybe that monitoring exercise will come in and play a bigger role than what I'm assuming. So I did all of that, and we were hoping to start the cycle at the end of September, being that we had a Labor Day trip, which got canceled, by the way, so we did not end up going to Barcelona. But anyways, we were set to get started at the end of September. And something happened that actually stressed me out a lot. And that was a few days before we were set to start, we had a call with a geneticist, which is part of their clinic's protocol. And through that discussion, they told us that they couldn't use the embryo probe that we developed with Juno Genetics from the time we were at Columbia. And that came to me as a shock, because it was one of the questions that I asked as part of our initial consult, and something that was really important to us, being that it was a very time-consuming process. It involved shipping genetic material across different labs. It included also a payment. It cost us about $4,000 to get that done. And it was also very last minute, right? So I was very frustrated with the clinic and kind of angry, honestly, because they had all my records. They knew I had developed that probe with the other clinic, and the clinician, or the doctor, had told me in that initial consult that Cornell would work with Juno. So there was some misinformation that happened during that process somewhere along the way. And I was just really, really, really upset. There are a few other moving pieces in the background. So a big component of this, and that also led me to be even more frustrated, is that I take a daily medication for another condition that I have, which I haven't really spoken about yet, and it's for my lungs. I take this daily in order to keep my lung function at a normal level. And as part of the preparation to start the cycle at the end of September, I had stopped this medication for about a month. And so this delay in potentially pushing this out for another month would mean that I would stay off of my medication for an extra month. And so I was just very annoyed that this had happened. And so I had to speak with my doctors, my pulmonologist about it. They spoke with the IVF doctor, and everyone just was scrambling to try to get on the same page. I tried to get exceptions or, some kind of approval to use Juno, but the clinic was very dead set on not using them. So long story short, we ended up pursuing a new probe development with the genetic clinic that Cornell uses, and that clinic is called RGI. And we took a gamble there, I suppose, because it never was guaranteed that they would be able to recreate the probe, right? There was a question at one point whether there was enough genetic material from Juno so they could ship it over to RGI. And, there were just a lot of unknowns. And so we figured, we picked this doctor for a reason. He was the only one that gave us options. So let's just go all in and try it this way. And my doctors also gave me comfort that staying off of my medication for an extra month wouldn't be so bad. And maybe it could even help with the success of my cycle. So lots of discussions happened, and we ended up pursuing a probe with RGI. We paid another $4,000. And I actually just heard from them this week that they were able to create a probe. So luckily and thankfully, everything worked out. But it was just a very hectic period. And I think the worst part of it was really the unexpected nature. So I had almost placed my order for medications to start my cycle at the end of September. And for the clinic to just put a stop on everything so close to me starting, to me was like, what's going on? I hadn't planned for this. Like, my dog. So all in all, I just felt like I was not mentally prepared for the changes, even though I've spoken about how one of the more difficult aspects of IVF is really just the unknown. So that taught me a huge lesson on patience and just being comfortable with taking one thing at a time. But RGI was able to recreate the probe, and so that's great news from that perspective. However, we did encounter another challenge in pushing the cycle an extra month, or extending it the extra month, because I have another trip planned in 2 weeks for my birthday in November, and we're traveling abroad to Venice. And I had this trip planned, and at the time when I was doing the math of, okay, we're not going to do a cycle at the end of September, that means it's gonna be at the end of October, right? But my cycle, or my menstrual cycle, is at a 5-week cycle or frequency. And when I did the math, I said, I can't do the IVF cycle and go on my trip. So I need to figure this out. And so I talked to my doctor, I explained the situation, and he put me on like a 5-day course of letrozole to try to speed up, I think, the growth of some of the follicles. And after 5 days, he instructed me to inject a trigger shot, a Lupron trigger shot, to help the leading follicle to mature quicker. And so there was also that unknown of, is this gonna work? Am I gonna have to cancel my trip? Because this is my priority, right? And I forgot to mention that the clinic was gonna close in early December. So this was basically all or nothing. Either we do a cycle in November or we wait until January, which to me, I couldn't do. We waited a few days. I was supposed to get my period on November 3rd so that I could start my cycle on November 4th, because you start on day 2 of your period. So November 3rd came and went, no period. And I was like, I'm doomed. Like, it's not gonna work out. And November 4th, I got my period. And so today, on November 5th, I went in for my monitoring to confirm whether or not I can start the cycle. So this morning I got blood work, ultrasound, signed some consents, and then I also took a COVID test. So this clinic requires a negative COVID test prior to starting, and then another, I think, a few days before you come in for retrieval. And I had to sign a disclaimer saying that if I test positive, that the cycle can be canceled, which to me, I was like, how can you just cancel something that like is so time intensive and so expensive just because you have a positive COVID test? Granted, I don't want to make light of COVID, being a high risk patient, but I feel like there's just a lot of stake to just completely cancel out the process. But anyways, we're not there. I did the test, so hopefully everything is negative, and I'll do my best to keep negative in this whole process, but there's just so many hoops to jump through. I think a lot more than last time when I was at Columbia. So I can't say it's been a smooth process by any means. I think inherently IVF is very hectic and can be very emotional and just very frustrating and just a very, process. And then now adding all these other elements of, having to recreate our genetic probe and having my period kind of cross over my time going away on a trip and having to sign a COVID attestation that my cycle can be canceled if I test positive. Like, all of these things have just added extra stress. So I'm honestly just hoping for the best. I've made a ton of changes since my last IVF cycle back in April. So I'm eager to see what the results are this time around. As I mentioned, I went in today for my baseline monitoring, and hopefully I'll hear back tonight, and we'll hopefully get started on taking the medications, which I already have on hand. I'll continue sharing how that goes. But either way, I just wanted to come on here and give an update on the past few months and what's to come ahead. So thank you guys for watching. Until next time. Bye.